Amelia stood at the edge of the dusty frontier town, the sun beating down on her and casting long shadows on the ground. Her heart ached as she looked at the wooden sign that marked the town's entrance, Dry Creek. It seemed so much like the other towns she had passed through on her long journey across the country. The only difference was that this was where her future had been waiting, or so she had hoped. She had always dreamed of finding love, a simple life with a man who would care for her, protect her, and build a family with her. The idea of a mail-order marriage had seemed like a perfect solution to her loneliness. There was a certain kind of hope she'd held on to for the better part of a year, hope that maybe this time her life would change. But the letter she had received just days ago from the man she was supposed to marry had been clear. I am sorry. This is not going to work. No explanation. No reason. Just cold words that had shattered the fragile dream she had built in her heart. Now, she was stranded in a strange town, without money, without a purpose. Her heart felt heavy, and for the first time in her life, she wondered if the idea of a family was nothing more than a cruel illusion. The world around her felt unforgiving. She couldn't help but feel like a failure as she walked down the main street of Dry Creek. Amelia tried to ignore the whispers she could hear behind her. People had a way of staring here, and it didn't help that she stood out. Her blue dress was the brightest thing in sight, and her long, dark hair blew around her face in the hot wind. The town was small, its wooden buildings worn and weathered by time. Most of the men were busy with work, but a few took note of her, their glances lingering longer than necessary. Amelia felt an uncomfortable pang in her chest, wishing she could simply vanish. But she didn't know where to go. All she had left was her pride, and she wasn't ready to give that up yet. She had to find a place to stay, maybe find work. Anything to get through this ordeal. Just as she turned to walk toward the local inn, a man approached her. He wasn't like the other men in town. He wasn't loud, and he didn't make crude remarks. In fact, he was quiet, almost too quiet, as if the world around him didn't matter. He was tall, dressed in a worn but neat sheriff's uniform, his boots heavy against the dusty ground. His face was rugged, with a strong jawline and sharp features, but his eyes were the most striking dark, almost black, and yet full of something she couldn't quite understand. He looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and sympathy, and for the first time since she had arrived, Amelia felt like someone saw her as more than just a disappointment. "Ma'am," the sheriff said, his voice deep and rough, "you look like you've had a long journey." Amelia blinked, surprised by his sudden appearance. She hadn't expected someone to speak to her so kindly. I'm just passing through," she said, her voice shaky. "I don't have anywhere to go." The sheriff studied her for a moment, his eyes narrowing slightly, as if he was weighing something in his mind. "I can help you with that. There's a cabin just outside of town. It's empty. You can stay there for a while, at least until you figure things out." Amelia hesitated. She didn't know this man, but something about him seemed different from the others. There was a quiet strength to him. Something about the way he spoke made her feel like he was offering more than just a place to stay. He wasn't making any promises. He wasn't asking for anything in return. I don't want to be any trouble," she said, unsure of what to say. She had been rejected once already. She wasn't sure if she was ready to trust again, even if it was only for a short time. "You won't be," the sheriff said firmly, his expression softening. "I don't mind the company, and you'll be safe. Dry Creek's not the busiest place, but it can get dangerous sometimes. It's better to have someone looking out for you." Amelia's thoughts swirled. She was alone, with no friends and no family nearby. She had nowhere else to go, and the town wasn't exactly friendly. Maybe it was better to accept the offer, at least for a while. "All right," she said finally. "I'll take you up on that offer." "Thank you." The sheriff nodded. "Name's Jace Caldwell. I'm the sheriff around here." He turned, starting down the dirt road, and she followed him, grateful for the quiet kindness he had shown her. It wasn't much, but it was something. The cabin was a small, modest structure on the outskirts of town, surrounded by a few trees and fields of tall grass. It was isolated, yet peaceful. Jace led her inside, where the furnishings were simple but comfortable, nothing extravagant, but everything she would need for a temporary stay. "Make yourself at home," Jace said, setting down a few bags he had carried for her. I'll check in with you later. If you need anything, just holler." Amelia nodded, taking a deep breath as she looked around. She was alone now, but the cabin felt like a sanctuary, a safe haven away from the town's prying eyes. "Thank you, Sheriff," she said quietly. Jace paused at the door, glancing back at her. For a moment, his dark eyes held her gaze, and she noticed something there, something she hadn't seen before. It was a flicker of emotion, a deep loneliness that mirrored her own. But then, just as quickly as it had appeared, he turned away and left, closing the door softly behind him. Later that evening, Amelia sat by the small fire in the hearth, the crackling of the wood providing the only sound in the cabin. She felt a mix of exhaustion and confusion. The events of the day had unfolded so quickly, and she wasn't sure what to make of it all. Jace's offer had been kind, but there was something about him that seemed distant, almost like he wasn't entirely part of this world. His quiet demeanor was unsettling, so if he carried some secret one he wasn't ready to share. Yet there was a comfort in his presence. She had never met anyone quite like him. Maybe it was because he didn't see her as a failure. He had simply seen a woman in need, and he had helped. In a world that often seemed indifferent, his kindness was a small but bright light in her life. The night stretched on, and Amelia eventually fell asleep on the small couch by the fire. The warmth of the flames soothed her, and her thoughts began to quiet. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like there might be hope again. She could take her time. She could figure things out. And maybe, just maybe, things would get better. Outside, under the vast starry sky, Jace stood by his cabin, watching over the town and the surrounding wilderness. He had a mission or responsibility to observe humanity, to learn from them, but something about Amelia had caught his attention in a way he hadn't expected. The emotions she stirred in him were unfamiliar and strange. For years, he had kept himself isolated, his alien nature a secret even from the people who thought they knew him. Yet, with Amelia, there was something different. He couldn't quite explain it, but he was drawn to her in a way that was hard to ignore. It was a connection he hadn't felt before, and it troubled him. He knew he had to be careful. Revealing too much about who he was could put them both in danger. But for now, he was content to watch over her, to keep her safe from the dangers he knew lurked in the world. Amelia didn't know it yet. But her life was about to change in ways she couldn't imagine, and so was his. Amelia awoke early the next morning, the soft light of dawn filtering through the small window of the cabin. The world outside was quiet, and for a brief moment, she could almost believe everything was normal again. The chaos of her journey seemed far away, and for the first time in days, she felt something close to peace. The fire in the hearth had burned low overnight, but the warmth from the embers still lingered in the room. She stretched and sighed, unsure of what to do next. It had been a long time since she had felt so uncertain, so out of place. She couldn't stop thinking about Sheriff Jace. That feeling of confusion from the night before still weighed on her after breakfast. Amelia went outside to gather some firewood. As she approached the edge of the woods behind the cabin, she noticed something strange, a soft glow, faint but unmistakable, just beyond the trees. She hesitated, her curiosity pulling her closer, despite a nagging sense of unease. What could it be? It wasn't the soft light of the morning sun, but something altogether different. The glow flickered, almost like a signal, and Amelia couldn't resist. She pushed through the brush and made her way toward it, her heart racing with anticipation and fear as she drew closer. The glow intensified, and she realized it was coming from a small clearing. In the center of the clearing stood a large, metallic object, half buried in the earth. It looked like a ship, but not one like any she had ever seen. It was smooth, sleek, and strange, with strange symbols carved into its surface that she couldn't read. Amelia took a step back, her breath catching in her throat. There was something otherworldly about the ship, something that made her feel both awe and terror. She reached out a hand, tempted to touch it, but before she could, she heard the sound of footsteps behind her. "Amelia," came Jace's voice, his tone low and serious. "What are you doing here?" She turned quickly, startled to see him standing at the edge of the clearing, his face hard and unreadable. She had no idea how long he had been watching her. His expression was tense, as though he had been hiding something. But it wasn't just his expression. There was something else. Something about his presence that felt ... different. I was just ... I didn't know what it was, Amelia said, her voice shaky. She looked back at the ship, then at Jace. Is this yours? Jace took a few steps forward, his eyes scanning the area. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides, but he didn't seem angry. He seemed ... worried. It's complicated, he said after a long pause. He looked at her, his eyes locking onto hers. There are things about me you don't understand, things I've been hiding from you. And now, you've found something you shouldn't have. Amelia's heart pounded in her chest. His words, his tone, the way he was looking at her all felt like a storm was brewing inside him. What do you mean? What is all of this? Jace hesitated, taking a step toward her. I didn't want you to find out this way, but it seems there's no other choice. His voice softened slightly, and for the first time, Amelia noticed a hint of vulnerability in him, a look that she hadn't seen before. Amelia, I'm not like the other men you've met. I'm not even human. Her breath caught in her throat. She couldn't have heard him right. What? Jace closed his eyes for a moment, as if gathering his thoughts. When he opened them again, his gaze was steady, almost as if he had made peace with something he had been hiding for a long time. I'm not from Earth. I'm from a place far away from another world. I was sent here to observe, to study humanity. Amelia stood frozen, her mind struggling to process his words. She wanted to laugh, to think it was some strange joke, but the seriousness in his eyes told her he wasn't lying. An alien? Jace nodded slowly. Yes. I've been living among humans for years, trying to understand you, trying to learn your ways. But somewhere along the line, I started to care for him more than I should. Amelia shook her head in disbelief. But why? Why would you hide that? All this time, I thought you were just a sheriff, a regular man. I am, Jace said, his voice firm but soft. I may not be human, but I've come to care for this world, this planet, and for you, more than you can imagine. Amelia felt a chill run down her spine. Her mind raced with 1,000 questions, and yet none of them seemed to matter. The man she had trusted, the man who had offered her help and safety, wasn't human. She felt a strange mix of fear and awe. How could this be real? Was it even possible? You've been living among us? Watching us? She asked, her voice shaky. Jace nodded. For years, I've seen humanity's beauty and its darkness. But more than that, I've seen how you've changed me. I've never felt anything like this before. I didn't expect it. And now that you've found this, he gestured to the strange ship, things are about to get complicated. Amelia glanced at the ship, her mind struggling to catch up with everything Jace had just said. What do you mean complicated? Jace took a deep breath, looking out at the ship, his face darkening. There are others like me. My people, or rather, the ones who sent me. They'll come looking for me now. They'll want to take me back, and they'll want to take the ship too. It's a powerful piece of technology, and they won't let it fall into the wrong hands. But if they find me here with you, they won't hesitate to do whatever it takes to remove the threat. Amelia felt her heart race. And what does that mean for me? I'm sorry, Jace, said his voice heavy. It means you're in danger. If they find out I've developed feelings for you, if they realize I've become too ... attached, they'll try to eliminate you to keep their mission safe. Amelia stepped back, her mind reeling. So ... all this time, you've been lying to me? Hiding who you really are? And now you expect me to just ... accept this? Jace looked at her, his expression filled with regret. I never meant to lie to you. I didn't want you to be involved in any of this. But now that you've found the ship, now that you know the truth, there's no going back. I didn't want to put you in danger, but I don't want to leave you either. Before he could finish, a sudden noise interrupted their conversation. A distant rumble echoed through the clearing, and Amelia's heart skipped a beat. She turned toward the sound, and what she saw made her blood run cold. In the sky, a shape appeared. It was fast to be anything human. A dark silhouette, darting through the clouds, coming closer with every second. Amelia felt her stomach drop as she realized what it was. "They're here," Jace whispered, his voice filled with dread. In an instant, he was by her side, grabbing her arm and pulling her toward the cabin. "We need to move now," Amelia's heart pounded as she was dragged toward the safety of the cabin. She could hear the hum of the ship growing louder. The ground beneath her seemed to shake with the force of its descent. Jace's grip tightened on her arm. "Stay close. Don't say anything. Trust me." Amelia didn't have time to respond. She could only follow, fear and confusion filling her mind. Whatever was happening, she had no idea if she was ready for it. But one thing was certain. Her life had just changed forever. Amelia's breath was shallow, her pulse racing, as she followed Jace back toward the cabin. The ground beneath their feet seemed to tremble with each passing second. The hum of the approaching ship growing louder, more insistent. She had no idea what was happening, but she knew one thing for certain. Her world had just turned upside down. Jace was an alien, and now, whatever had been hidden in the skies above Dry Creek was coming to find him. "Jace, what's going on?" Amelia gasped, struggling to keep up with his fast pace. "We don't have time to explain right now," Jace replied, his voice tight. He glanced over his shoulder, his eyes scanning the sky. "They've found us. We need to move, and we need to move fast." Amelia's mind was spinning. What had he said earlier? That there were others like him? And now they were coming, and he had to protect her. She didn't know what to think or what to do. But the way Jace was looking at her, the way his eyes were filled with worry, told her one thing. He cared. He wasn't just protecting her because of his mission. He was protecting her because he didn't want to lose her. They reached the cabin in a few short minutes. The door slammed shut behind them, and Jace immediately began to barricade the windows, his movements swift and practiced. Amelia stood in the middle of the small room, frozen in place, her heart still racing. She couldn't seem to catch her breath. The ship had been so close. Too close. "They're coming for me," Jace said, his voice low but urgent as he turned to face her. "They won't stop until they get what they want." Amelia asked, her voice shaky. "The ship," Jace answered. "It's not just a ship. It's a key to a weapon that could change the course of history. My people have been protecting it for centuries. If it falls into the wrong hands, it could mean the end for Earth and countless other worlds." Amelia's mind raced, but one question burned brighter than the others. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you trust me?" Jace's eyes softened as he stepped closer. "I wanted to, but I couldn't risk it. If you knew too much, if you got too close, you'd become a target. I never meant for you to be involved in any of this. But now, ... He trailed off, his hand reaching out to touch her arm. "Now that you know the truth, I don't know how to protect you." Amelia's chest tightened. There was so much she didn't understand. But the one thing she did understand was the look in Jace's eyes. He wasn't just a sheriff anymore. He was someone who had risked everything for her, someone who had never expected to feel this way. She could see it in the way he stood there, vulnerable and conflicted. "Jace," she whispered, stepping closer to him. "You're not alone in this. I'm not leaving you. I don't care what's coming. I don't care what you've been hiding. You're not alone." For a moment, Jace just stared at her, his face unreadable. Then, as if some invisible weight had been lifted, he closed the distance between them and pulled her into an embrace. She felt his warmth surround her, his strong arms holding her close. The sense of fear she'd carried for the past few hours began to fade, placed by something stronger. Hope, a sense of security. "I don't deserve you," Jace said, his voice thick with emotion. "I've done things I'm not proud of. But you, Amelia, you make me want to be better. You make me feel human again." Amelia's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't realized how much she needed to hear those words until now. She pulled back slightly, looking up at him with a mixture of tenderness and determination in her eyes. "You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be you." Jace looked at her for a long moment, his expression softening. He leaned down and kissed her forehead gently, his lips warm against her skin. When he pulled away, his eyes were brighter than before. For the first time, he looked like he believed in something. Someone heard, but the moment didn't last. A loud crash from outside shattered the quiet, and the ground beneath them shook once more. The ship was close to close. Jace's face hardened, and he took a step back, his protective instincts kicking in. "They've landed," he said, his voice low but resolute. "They're here." Amelia's heart raced again, and she felt a knot tighten in her stomach. "What now?" "Now," Jace said, turning to the small cabinet by the wall and pulling out a set of strange tools. "We fight. I'll protect you. But I need you to stay calm, Amelia. Whatever happens, don't go outside. Stay here in the cabin. Don't let them get to you." "What if they find me?" she asked, fear creeping into her voice. "They won't," Jace said firmly. "Not as long as I'm here." The tension in the room was thick as Jace set to work, his movements quick and precise. Amelia's eyes were fixed on him, watching as he prepared for what was coming. She could see the change in his earlier vulnerability replaced by a fierce determination. He was ready to protect her at any cost, even if it meant facing his own people, even if it meant risking everything. Outside, the hum of the alien ship grew louder, and the air felt thick with anticipation. It wasn't just a ship anymore. It was a warning, a sign that everything they had fought for, everything they had hoped for, was about to come crashing down. Suddenly, the door rattled. Amelia jumped, her heart pounding in her chest. Jace was instantly at her side, his hand gripping her arm. "Stay back," he whispered urgently. The door crashed open, and a group of shadowy figures stepped into the cabin. They were tall, their faces obscured by dark helmets. The air around them seemed to crackle with an unnatural energy. Jace stood tall, his body tense and ready for action. "You're not welcome here," he growled, his voice low but commanding. One of the figures stepped forward, its voice mechanical and cold. "Jace Caldwell, you have violated our orders. You were sent to observe, not to interfere." The figure's voice was like a weapon itself, cutting through the tension in the room. "You have made a mistake, Jace, a mistake that will cost you everything." Amelia felt a cold chill run through her, but she didn't back away. She stood beside Jace, her heart pounding with fear, but also with something else of fierce loyalty she hadn't known she was capable of. She would not leave him, not now. Not ever. "I won't go back," Jace said, his voice filled with defiance. "I've seen too much. I've lived among them, and I'm not going to let you destroy this world." The figure's cold laugh echoed in the cabin. "You think you can stop us? You are nothing more than a traitor, Jace. You don't belong here." With a sudden movement, Jace reached into the cabinet and pulled out a small device. It hummed to life in his hand, glowing a soft blue light. He raised it, and in a split second, the room filled with an intense pulse of energy. The figures in front of him staggered back, the shockwave pushing them off balance. "Leave now," Jace commanded, his voice sharp and full of authority, "or I will make you." The figures hesitated for a moment, then slowly retreated, their faces hidden behind their helmets. With one final glance at Jace, they disappeared out the door. Leaving the cabin eerily silent, Amelia stood frozen, still processing what had just happened. The aliens had been there to take Jace back, but he had fought them off. He had protected her, and she knew, deep down, that he would do it again if he had to. Jace turned to her, his eyes filled with exhaustion, but also with relief. "It's over for now," he said, his voice quieter than before. "But it won't be the last time they come." Amelia stepped toward him, her heart swelling with emotion. She reached out, touching his hand. "I'm not going anywhere, Jace. We're in this together. Whatever happens, we'll face it." Jace looked at her, his eyes softening with a mix of gratitude and love. "I don't deserve you," he whispered. Amelia smiled, the warmth between them filling the room. "You never have to deserve me," she said, her voice steady and sure. "You just have to be you." And in that moment, with the stars shining above them and the future uncertain, they both knew that no matter what the universe threw their way, they would face it together, united, stronger than ever.